I missed my mom's funeral to support my girlfriend's art show. That same night, she posted a TikTok. POV, you're dating a walking wallet. I read it. I'm 26M, and yeah, that title feels like a punch to the gut even typing it out. I've been sitting with this for a while and decided to finally get it off my chest. Maybe writing it down will help me make some sense of how things spiral this far. I guess the best place to start is with my girlfriend. Well, ex now, Cleo. She's 24, and we've been together for about 3 years. We met at this indie bookstore/coffee shop that no longer exists thanks to a real estate buyout. I was in there doing some freelance design work, and she was putting up flyers for her first art exhibit. She had this big curly hair, paint on her hands, and this frantic, chaotic energy that made everyone in the room feel a little more awake. I asked about her art. She rolled her eyes and said, "It's not art, it's survival." That should have been my first clue. But I liked her. She was sharp, intense, completely unpredictable. I'd had a few flings before her, but Cleo made me feel like I was on the edge of something. Like life could be loud and messy and still beautiful. I thought we had that kind of tortured artist, logical designer balance that made us perfect opposites. Anyway, things were rocky. Even in the beginning, Cleo was all about spontaneity and chasing the next spark, which meant she quit jobs as soon as they got boring, bounced between projects, and barely scraped by. She hated routines. I, on the other hand, had a full-time remote gig doing UX work for a mid-sized tech company. I liked my spreadsheets, my to-do lists, my early morning runs. She used to say I was stuck in the matrix and that I needed to feel more, plan less. But I didn't mind her teasing. At first, the issue started creeping in around year 2 when I noticed Cleo hadn't contributed to rent in months. She always had a reason. A gallery promised her a showing, but the curator bailed. She was working on a commission, but the client ghosted. Her Venmo was frozen. Her PayPal was hacked. You name it. I'd cover the gap each time because I figured it was temporary. Artists struggled, right? That's just part of it. I didn't even realize how bad it had gotten until I was doing my taxes and realized Cleo hadn't paid for groceries, rent, utilities, or literally anything in over 9 months. I confronted her gently, just asked if we could talk about splitting expenses better. She got quiet, then said something like, "Wow, I thought you supported my dream." That shut me up. She was good at making me feel like the villain for setting boundaries. Now, I've always had a complicated relationship with my mom. She was a tough woman, raised 3 kids on her own after dad pieced out. She wasn't warm, not exactly, but she was always there. My older brother Damon called her the Iron Wall. My younger sister Raina called her Momzilla, but I just called her Mom. We hadn't talked as much since I moved in with Cleo. Part of it was distance. Cleo and my mom did not get along. Cleo thought she was judgmental and cold. My mom thought Cleo was reckless and disrespectful. Neither of them was exactly wrong, to be fair. Still, I'd call her once every few weeks, and she'd always end with "Don't forget where you came from." I didn't know how seriously to take it when Raina texted me that Mom had been in and out of the hospital. Raina was always a bit dramatic. Everything was either a crisis or a miracle. I checked in with her, told her to keep me posted, and promised I'd come visit once Cleo's art show was done. Cleo had finally landed a spot in a real gallery, this trendy place downtown that hosted young artists and influencers. She was obsessing over it for weeks. It was all she talked about. Then the text came, "She's gone." No build-up. Just those 2 words from Raina. My chest went hollow. I stared at it for what felt like an hour before I showed Cleo. She blinked at me, gave me this awkward side hug, and then said, "So what does this mean for the show?" I kid you not, that was her first question. I told her I didn't know. The funeral was set for Saturday. The show was Friday night. I figured I'd fly out after the opening and be there in time. Maybe it was naive. Maybe I just didn't want to let Cleo down after everything I'd already sunk into her dreams. I'd paid for framing, venue insurance, even some prints. She kept saying, "This is my make or break moment." I believed her. So I went. I stayed for the whole show. Smiled when people complimented her work. told her she did great, took pictures for her socials. And that night, while I sat alone in our apartment scrolling through condolences and messages from my family, Cleo posted a TikTok. Just her, standing in the middle of the gallery, zooming in on her necklace, which I bought her, lip syncing to some trending audio. The caption? POV, you're dating a walking wallet. I watched it twice, thinking maybe I misunderstood. But no, there was nothing ironic about it. The comments were full of laughing emojis and people saying girl boss and as you should. I didn't even know how to respond. I hadn't even unpacked my grief yet. I didn't go to the funeral. I missed my own mom's funeral. And that was the moment I realized something had to change. But the worst part? That wasn't even the biggest betrayal. I sat in my office chair, still staring at Cleo's TikTok like it was a foreign object I couldn't quite process. The caption, POV, you're dating a walking wallet, hovered in my mind. The more I thought about it, the more the words felt like a slap, one I wasn't prepared for. But in a way, I guess I should have been. I've been seeing the signs for a while, just ignoring them in favor of trying to make this relationship work. Now, though, I couldn't look away. It was the quiet that made everything worse. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. My eyes flicked to the clock, 10:37 p.m. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but I wasn't going to let it slide. I had to confront her right then. I walked into the living room where Cleo was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She didn't even look up when I walked in. So, I saw your TikTok, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced up, a small smile curling at the corner of her lips. Oh, yeah? It's blowing up. People love it. She didn't seem to get it. Is that what you really think of me? Just a walking wallet. I could feel my pulse quicken. I wasn't yelling, but it felt like my words were carrying more weight than I meant them to. Cleo sat up, wiping a stray piece of hair from her face. It's just a joke, babe, she said, her tone so casual, like it was all nothing. You know how people are. They just take stuff the wrong way. It wasn't about you specifically. I took a step closer, the distance between us shrinking like there was something tangible in the air. Then what was it about? I didn't know how to ask without sounding like I was pleading. But in that moment, I felt like I was begging for clarity. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, her usual carefree attitude slipping for a split second. It's not like you don't know what I'm talking about. You have been supporting me. But I'm out here hustling, making it happen. I can't always just expect things to fall into my lap, right? So yeah, I work with what I got. What's the harm in having a little fun with it? There it was. The truth, or at least her version of it. In her mind, everything I did was just a transaction. She'd been so focused on her art, on her image, that she'd forgotten I was a person, not a wallet, not a stepping stone for her own success. I stood there for a moment, just letting the silence fill the room. The weight of it was suffocating. And then I asked her something that had been on my mind for a while, but I had never fully voiced. You ever thought about what would happen if I stopped paying for everything? If I stopped being the one who always fixed things? Her eyes flicked away from me, and she muttered something under her breath, something like, "Don't start that with me." But she didn't deny it. She didn't even try to pretend that wasn't her reality. I wasn't done yet. I went to my desk and pulled up my email. It took me a moment to find it, but when I did, I felt my heart sink. There it was. The email from the gallery Cleo had been dying to get into. The one that was supposed to launch her career into the art world. The one I'd been pushing her to take seriously. The subject line read, "Final confirmation, art show," with a little note underneath that made my blood run cold. It was addressed to me, not to Cleo. I clicked it open, and the contents were even worse than I'd imagined. It wasn't just a standard confirmation for the show. It was an offer for a solo exhibit. Cleo had been offered an opportunity to display her work alone, to have her name in lights, to be the center of attention. It was everything she dreamed of. But the email? It wasn't for Cleo. It was for me. They'd sent the offer to my email, not hers. Because I'd been the one in touch with them. I'd been the one pushing for her work to get noticed. I had been the one who'd paid for her portfolio, for the website, for the materials. They knew who had been calling the shots, thought I didn't know how to process it. The rage, the confusion, the feeling of betrayal, all of it was flooding through me all at once. I walked back to the living room, holding the phone in my hand, my knuckles white from how tightly I was gripping it. "This is the email you didn't tell me about, huh?" I showed her the screen, my voice colder now. She stared at it, her expression unreadable at first, and then I saw it. That flicker of panic. It was subtle, but it was there. She didn't even try to explain. "I've been doing the work," I said, trying to control my breathing. "I've been pushing for you, and you didn't think to tell me this? You didn't think I should know?" Cleo's lips parted, but no words came out. She stood up, her hands raised in some form of defense, but I wasn't sure what she was defending anymore. Her dream? Or herself? "This is not the time for this, Theo," she said, her voice shaking just a little. "We've got bigger things to worry about than some email." That's when it hit me, the thing that made everything snap into focus. To her, I was just another part of her image. Another source of material, of financial support. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't a boyfriend. I was an accessory. A means to an end. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice quiet now. "I missed my mom's funeral. I skipped it to be here for your show, Cleo. And this is what I get." Her mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. I wasn't done. "And you think this is just a joke? You think you can use me like this, and I'll just roll with it?" She took a shaky breath, then whispered, "I never asked you to do any of this, Theo." That was it. That was the breaking point. I stood there, realizing just how far I had let it go. And I couldn't take it anymore. There was nothing left to say to her. I grabbed my jacket, the sound of it rustling harshly in the silence, and walked out of the apartment. But as I stepped into the hallway, I realized I had made a choice. And now, everything I had been holding in would come pouring out. But before I could even process what was happening, I heard a sound behind me. Cleo's voice. "You can't leave, Theo. You've already made your decision." She was right behind me now, almost too close, and I could feel the tension between us, thick and suffocating. But I didn't stop. I kept walking. And that was when I realized, with certainty, that it was no longer just about what happened with my mom or what Cleo had done. This was about something deeper. I had a lot of choices ahead of me. But right then, I knew I wasn't going back. I didn't stop walking when Cleo called out my name. I didn't turn around. The weight of everything I'd just learned, everything that had been building between us, felt like it was anchoring me in place. But at the same time, there was this sharp, freeing clarity in me. I was done. It wasn't just the TikTok. It wasn't just the betrayal of missing my mom's funeral. It was how she'd used me for everything, her art, her rent, her social media presence, and had the audacity to act like I was the one in the wrong for finally calling it out. I took the stairs down, not caring that I'd forgotten my keys, my phone, or anything else. I wasn't going to let myself be pulled back into her orbit. I had to breathe, to think, to plan. By the time I reached the street, the cool air hit me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was making a decision for myself. I didn't want to waste time sitting in anger. I wanted to channel it into something. Something I could control. Something that could make her see, really see, just how much she'd taken for granted. The first thing I did when I got home to my small, cluttered apartment was grab my laptop. I didn't even bother to take off my jacket. I opened my email and started sorting through the hundreds of conversations I'd had over the last year with Cleo's gallery connections. It wasn't hard to find the ones where I'd been mentioned. I had everything saved, every email, every confirmation. I'd been the one talking to curators, arranging her private showings, setting up meetings. I'd been her unofficial manager, her PR agent, without even realizing I was the one doing the work. Now, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I started by drafting a few emails. They were polite, professional, and absolutely lethal in their clarity. I explained that I'd been working with Cleo on her behalf, that I was her primary contact, but unfortunately, I could no longer continue due to personal reasons. I wasn't going to be cruel about it. At least, not yet. But I was going to make it clear that she wasn't the one in charge of her own career. That I had been the one keeping things afloat, and now I was pulling back. I couldn't be her walking wallet anymore. I couldn't keep helping her keep up the facade. I didn't send them immediately. I needed a plan. I needed a way to ensure Cleo would feel the loss. But I also wanted to give her a chance to step up, to fix this herself. She'd always thought I would just be there forever, that I'd continue to be the one who cleaned up the messes, paid the bills, and smoothed over her mistakes. But I had a little secret of my own. While Cleo was running around pretending to be this misunderstood artist with grand dreams, I had been quietly building something of my own. I'd been slowly growing my freelance business on the side. I didn't talk about it much, Cleo never asked, and I didn't see the point in bringing it up. But it was going well. Very well. In fact, I had a few clients who were more than eager to work with me on larger projects. Projects that I had been holding off on, thinking that I would have to support Cleo's aspirations first. I wasn't just doing this for revenge. I was doing it for me. I was finally going to give myself the chance I had been denying for so long. But I needed more than just the emails. I needed Cleo to understand that this wasn't about being petty or spiteful. It was about balance. And I had given and given until I had nothing left to give. She had to know how much she had relied on me without ever acknowledging it. I made a list in my head of everything I'd done for her, everything I'd sacrificed. I thought about all the nights I spent alone, just waiting for her to come back from networking events that were little more than cocktail parties with people she barely knew. How I paid for her gallery fees because she couldn't afford them. How I loaned her my car when hers broke down for the third time in 2 months. How I encouraged her when all I wanted to do was scream at her to get her act together. I wasn't going to make her pay in the traditional sense. This wasn't about hurting her physically or even financially, at least not directly. It was about making sure she knew. I wanted to make her understand just how little she had actually done on her own, just how little she was without me. I took a breath, closing my laptop for a moment. The silence in my apartment was oppressive. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator again, but this time, it didn't feel like background noise. It felt like the calm before a storm. I was going to make my move, but I had to be smart about it. I knew Cleo's gallery had another upcoming event, a smaller, more intimate showing for a group of artists they were working with. I had seen the list of participants. The organizers were counting on her name to help attract people, but I also knew Cleo didn't care about her commitments. She'd flake on anything if it wasn't shiny enough. So, I made another decision. I reached out to the event organizer, the one I'd been working with behind the scenes. I told them the truth, not about my mom's death, not yet, but about how Cleo had been failing to meet deadlines and commitments. I didn't paint her as a monster, but I didn't sugarcoat her behavior either. I didn't ask them to cancel her participation, but I made sure they understood the situation. When the organizer replied, it was like a switch flipped in my mind. Cleo had no idea what was coming, but it was more than just her art show. It was about showing her that her actions had consequences. That maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the one who always had to pick up the pieces. I was taking control, and it felt good. The last email I sent was to Cleo herself. I kept it brief. I told her that I wouldn't be coming back to the apartment tonight, that I needed some time to myself, and that I needed her to reconsider the way she was treating me, and maybe, just maybe, she should start thinking about the ways she's been using people her whole life. I didn't expect a response. I didn't want one. But I knew something would shift. The world was about to get a lot smaller for her, and I was going to be the one to make sure she saw it. The silence in the apartment felt like it was swallowing me whole. My phone sat face down on the coffee table, a small but constant reminder of everything I was leaving behind, everything I was no longer willing to tolerate. I wasn't just stepping away from Cleo. I was stepping away from the version of myself that had let this relationship fester for so long. That night, I stayed at a friend's place. I didn't want to be around Cleo, and I needed time to breathe without any more manipulation or drama. But I wasn't just avoiding her. I was waiting for something. Waiting for the moment when she would realize the weight of her actions. The next morning, I got the first sign that something had shifted. Cleo called. I didn't pick up. I didn't want to hear the excuses, the desperation, the half-hearted apologies I knew she would try to make. I let it ring, then hit ignore before sending her a brief text. I need space, Cleo. We need to talk, but not now. I half expected her to blow up at me, but there was nothing. No angry texts. No emotional outbursts. Just silence. And that silence was exactly what I needed. It gave me time to keep moving forward, to solidify the boundaries I'd set for myself. It was a relief, in a way, to know that I was finally in control of my own decisions. A couple of days later, I met with the gallery organizer. Her name was Marissa, and we'd had several conversations about Cleo's art and her upcoming shows. Marissa had always been friendly but businesslike, and I appreciated that about her. I wasn't sure what to expect when I emailed her, but when we sat down, she was completely understanding. I knew something had been off, Marissa said, her voice quiet, like she didn't want to add to the already tense situation. Cleo's a talented artist, but she's been difficult to work with. We've been chasing her for weeks, and she's missed 2 deadlines already for the upcoming show. It's been a little frustrating, to be honest. I felt a strange sense of vindication wash over me. I hadn't done anything malicious, but hearing that Cleo wasn't fooling anyone else but me felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I explained everything. How I'd been the one handling most of her correspondence, how I'd been pushing for her success when she wasn't ready to take it seriously. I didn't badmouth her. I just laid out the facts. When I finished, Marissa leaned back in her chair and sighed. I think it's time we reassess her participation in the event, she said. I understand if you want to withdraw your involvement, but I do want to thank you for bringing this to my attention. It means a lot to have someone who's been looking out for the gallery. I'm not withdrawing, I said, but I do think it's important that Cleo takes responsibility for her actions. She can't just keep expecting people to clean up her messes. Marissa nodded. I agree. I'll reach out to her directly, but it's clear she's been relying on others to get things done for her. And with that, the decision was made. Cleo's solo show was pulled. She wouldn't be getting the spotlight she had been counting on. I didn't want to destroy her career, but I wanted to show her that success didn't come by taking others for granted. The email I'd sent to the gallery was enough for them to reassess her readiness, and the organizer promised they would offer her a chance to redeem herself, if she was serious about it. For the next few days, things were quiet. I focused on myself. My freelance business, which had always been in the background, was now front and center. I started picking up more clients, expanding my network, and I even reached out to a few local businesses that were interested in working with me long-term. It was a strange feeling to be putting my energy into my work instead of always putting someone else's dreams ahead of mine. But it felt right. It felt like I was finally reclaiming the space I'd been too scared to occupy for so long. Cleo, on the other hand, didn't respond to me at first. She didn't text, call, or even come by to try and fix things. I thought about her a lot during that time. Was she angry? Did she feel betrayed? Honestly, I didn't know. But I had to remind myself that her emotions weren't my responsibility anymore. A week passed. Then 2. And then, Cleo finally reached out. But it wasn't what I expected. She sent a long message. It was apologetic, yes, but it wasn't just about her actions. She apologized for everything. The way she'd taken me for granted, the way she used me to fuel her ambitions without ever acknowledging the sacrifices I made. And in her apology, she also took some responsibility for her behavior. But she also asked me to reconsider. She asked if we could work things out, maybe start over. She said she realized how much she had pushed me away and that she wanted to rebuild, slowly, this time. I thought about it for a while. It wasn't an easy decision. Part of me still cared about her, and there was a small part of me that wanted to believe in her potential. But the truth was, I had changed. I had grown during that time apart, and I knew that if I went back to her, it would just be falling into the same toxic cycle. I took a deep breath and wrote back. I think we're too different now, Cleo. I've learned a lot about myself over the past few weeks. And while I'll always care about you, I need to keep moving forward. For me, I hope you understand. That was the last conversation we had. After that, I didn't hear from her again. As for my life now, well, it's a lot different. I'm doing well with my freelance work. I've had a few offers for bigger projects, and I feel like I'm finally building something that's entirely my own. And Cleo? She's still out there, working her way through the art world, but it's been clear from the few updates I've gotten that she hasn't changed much. She still doesn't take full responsibility for her actions. And I think, in some ways, that's what will always hold her back. But me? I'm finally free. And that's something I haven't felt in a long time.